survive the bitter winters high up in the mountains, the nomads relied on extremely well-insulated but portable homes called yurts.
This is the flap that covers the door of the yurt, and it's done with felt, and it's quilted to make it much firmer because the felt otherwise, with all wear and tear, would pull apart. Then it's edged with a nice braided wool edging. And down at the bottom is this nice woven band. It goes around the complete circumference to hold the felt in place. We've seen all of these techniques in the mummies. We've seen the braided bands, we've seen the quilted band, and the felt. All of this was influenced from the nomadic people down to the lowland sedentary people.
The yurt and its occupants' way of life have changed little in 2,000 years.
I'm interested to know what kind of diet they have. What do they have in their normal diet?
Very, almost no vegetables, mostly milk products.
And we see some of them on the table here, don't we? Yeah.
And some meat, a bit of meat.
There's their diet very...
Charlotte learns that this family of nomads exchanges meat and wool for grain, which they add to their own food products. Without this carbohydrate supplement, they would suffer from crippling malnutrition. If the ancient nomad population was healthy, they too must have traded with outsiders for grain.
They don't have many illnesses. They just flus, colds, that sort of thing. They have 500 sheep and goats, 500 sheep, 100 cows, cattle, and 80 horses.
But exactly who were the nomads? And where did they come from? Archaeologist Lou Nguyen suggests they try to locate a mysterious site dating from the time of the ancient nomads. Perhaps it will yield some clues.
Oh, God. Amazing. Look at that.
Oh, look at those.
A colossal rock face, covered with elaborate engravings.
This mountain is a perfect setting for a reproductive fertility rite ceremony. There's a lot of grass here, it's very lush, and the mountain itself is so grand that it's natural that people would want to come here and have ceremonies.
I see females performing a very ritual dance, and some of them even falling into ecstasy during the dance time. And the copulation between the male and the female are prominent in these scenes.
These 3,000-year-old dancing women with their narrow waists and stylized gestures are nearly identical to figures found in Bulgaria and in the Ukraine, dated to about 1,000 years earlier. There, too, the dancers celebrate fertility and reproduction. These figures have large noses, long faces, and round eyes. The nomads are thought to have Iranian origins. Here, their Western roots are literally carved in stone. Eager to establish if the nomads traded for grain with the mummy people, Charlotte and Lou try to figure out how well the ancient herdsmen ate by studying their skeletal remains.
In a healthy human body, this bit of the pelvis should be separate from the sacrum and able to move freely. But this half is fused.
I suspect this is probably due to injury. And again, this may well be related to their lifestyle, maybe to horse riding. On the back of the mandible, you'll see a very large hole there, which indicates that the bone has got infected inside. The pressure's built up, and it's forced the pus that's formed inside the bone.
这个牙齿啊，它这个龋齿这种情况呢，一般呢，发生龋齿的时候呢，主要
exposes the pulp cavity, the centre of the tooth, which you can see there, and an infection gets into the roots of the teeth and causes destruction of the suggested this is associated with walking up and down steep mountainsides, being in the hills a lot. I don't see much evidence in the nomadic skeletons I've looked at of nutritional deficiencies, so therefore they must have been getting additions to their main part of the diet from a source, and that's probably from the agriculturalists, and they would have been trading their animals for things like grain, fruit and vegetables.
It now seems certain that the nomads bartered with the mummy people for food. But it turns out they became far more enterprising, wide-ranging traders. Their graves contain such items as a 3,000-year-old makeup stick and numerous bronze objects made hundreds of miles away.
We have evidence of long-distance trade across the mountains and steppes. So we have bronze knives, which show a very strong affinity with the steppe nomads on the northern side of the Tian Shan and clear as far north as southern Siberia.
At the time bronze was spreading eastward, the Chinese recorded their first descriptions of European-looking nomads.
They say that they had red hair, bluish green eyes, and they looked like monkeys, and long noses. They had long noses, and they looked like monkeys. Hairy all over.
这是他们同时出土的弓箭
A bow and some arrows.
Later nomad finds include artifacts that were not intended for sale.
现在还能用
You could still use this.
但是改了以后
These swift riders became masters of archery, ready to trade in violence when it suited their interests.
Very powerful.
完了以后是和弓一块用的箭
Before long, the threat of their powerful serpentine bows would profoundly affect the course of Chinese history.
这个箭呢它有那个几种你看像这个
There are several kinds of arrows. This one has an iron.
箭杆也比较粗
The bow was found during Lu's most recent excavations, which have yielded many spectacular finds dating to about 300 BC. They are kept in a locked storeroom, and until now have never been filmed by outsiders. One of the most important discoveries is a fully clothed woman wearing a conical hat, symbolic of a high priestess of the nomads. It would one day become the hallmark of witches in Europe. Most startling of all is a male mummy, bearing marks unlike any seen before. The man's chest had been incised, possibly due to lung disease, then sewn up with horsehair sutures. By this time, the distinction between farmers and nomads was blurring.
They lived in tents. They followed the grasses and waters. They had considerable knowledge of agriculture. They owned cattle, horses, camels, sheep, and goats. They were proficient with bows and arrows. They seemed to be both nomadic and agriculturalist at the same time. So I believe that they were able to adapt to different kind of circumstances, and that those who found themselves in oases, for example, became farmers. And those who were in upper pastures or in grasslands either maintained a nomadic lifestyle or they became nomads.
Up in the high mountains, the nomadic population expanded rapidly and soon reached the Chinese frontier. Trading directly with the Chinese, they fell in love with their superb silks. To this day, dearly prized by the region's nomadic Cossacks.
The nomads had extensive trade networks from about 1000 BC, but the trade in silk